Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Rory McLennan, coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. Pope Francis said there are no real winners in any war, such as those in the Middle East and Ukraine. He said this while visiting a World War II military cemetery on Thursday. The Holy Father visited Rome's Commonwealth cemetery and laid flowers to commemorate All Souls' Day, when the Catholic Church remembers the faithfully departed. Along with advocating for a two-state solution to the Middle East issue, he also denounced the rise in anti-Semitism around the world and asserted Israel's right to self-defence. The pontiff sought the establishment of humanitarian corridors and peace in the region. The Holy Father also discussed the tragedy of war in general and reflected on the graves of the soldiers buried nearby. He remembered the dead and prayed for a reunion with them in God's kingdom. The United Nations Children's Fund has expressed regret for the deaths and damage caused by a recent Israeli airstrike on the crowded Jabaliya refugee camp in the Gaza Strip. A UNICEF statement said the bombardments throughout the last 3.5 weeks have resulted in more than 3,500 children being killed and over 6,800 children being injured. The statement said that throughout this period, more than 400 children would have died or been injured every day, and that this cannot become the new normal. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken expressed strong support for Israel's right to self-defense. He criticised Hamas for using civilians as human shields, calling it a monstrous and deliberate tactic. A prominent ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned Poland that it could lose its statehood, as the NATO member nation is now being considered as an enemy of Moscow. Former President Dmitry Medvedev and Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council made the comments in an 8,000-word article on Russia-Poland ties. He said Russia would treat Poland precisely as a historical enemy. Poland's support for Ukraine has led to further straining of ties between Moscow and Warsaw. The research project Churches Under Fire has revealed that more than 500 churches have either been damaged or destroyed by war violence since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war in February last year. The goal of the project is to document what it terms the destruction of cultural heritage in order to bring the Russian Federation to justice for this war crime in the future. Churches Under Fire includes an online platform where photos and videos of damaged or destroyed churches can be collected. Project head Irina Lysenko said the war has not only affected the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, but also the Moscow-affiliated Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church as well. Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York has issued a harsh rebuke in response to an increase in acts of religious hatred in the United States. The top prelate also called for peace following the Hamas attacks on Israel last month. The chairperson of the US Conference of Catholic Bishops' Committee on Religious Liberty said that every human life has immeasurable value. He said that hating one's neighbours is a grave sin against God, who created all in his image and likeness. The Cardinal prayed that people of goodwill may stand bravely for peace and that those whose hearts are filled with hatred turn from their hatred. Latest statistics reveal the number of anti-Semitic incidents in the US has gone up by several 100% since the October the 7th Hamas attack on Israel. At Cornell University in upstate New York, security was increased around the Center for Jewish Living after online threats, including a call for it to be bombed. In the United States, a federal judge has made it clear that Planned Parenthood must face trial over a $1.8 billion lawsuit by the state of Texas. The state is accusing the entity of defrauding its Medicaid health insurance program. It was last month that U.S. District Judge Matthew Kashmerich in Amarillo said that the case would go to trial in April. The trial will look into whether or not Planned Parenthood committed fraud by receiving state funding and failing to repay the state after Texas removed the organization from its Medicaid program. The lawsuit was filed by an anonymous plaintiff in 2021 under the Federal False Claims Act. It accuses Planned Parenthood of overbilling by $17 million after the state announced its decision to remove the pro-abortion group from the Medicaid insurance program. A report by the United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres says that Iran is carrying out executions at an alarming rate. The report accuses Tehran of executing at least 419 people in the first 7 months of the year. That's a 30% rise over the same period in 2022. 7 men were executed for taking part in nationwide protests. The protests were sparked by the custodial death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in September in 2022 after she was detained by morality police for allegedly wearing a loose headscarf. Mr. Guterres said around 20,000 people were detained for taking part in the demonstrations between September the 17th, 2022 and February the 8th this year. The COVID pandemic ushered in the most rapid rise in homeschooling the United States has ever seen. However, 3 years later, a report by the Washington Post shows that many parents are still continuing homeschooling, even in unexpected places like New York City. The analysis was based on data gathered from nearly 7,000 school districts between the beginning of the pandemic and the end of the previous spring academic year. In the Post's investigation, data from 32 states and Washington, D.C. were gathered, accounting for almost 60% of school-aged children in the country. The statistics from New York City, a progressive mainstay where one might not anticipate seeing a homeschool boom, are arguably the most intriguing. The Post's analysis revealed that it is the region with the fastest growing population of homeschoolers. Of the 33 school districts in the city, 24 have witnessed a 200% growth in homeschoolers over the last 6 years. In his latest move to help the poor, Pope Francis has opened 2 new laundromats for the homeless. The new Pope Francis laundromats are also equipped with showers and opened on the 2nd of November in the city of Turin. One is in the San Giorgio Martire parish, while the other is in the House of Friendship at the La Sosta town centre. About 200 homeless people attended Mass, presided over by Papal Almoner Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, before the inauguration of the centres. Manufacturing company Procter & Gamble launched the project, supported by the Dicastery for the Service of Charity. The local Sant'Egidio community will be in charge of the laundromats. Products from several top hygiene firms will be made available to the poor, who will be able to wash and dry their blankets and their garments. Hundreds of students from Virginia's Loudoun County public schools walked out of class to protest against the school district's gender policy. Under the policy, any so-called transgender student can use school bathrooms or lockers based on their chosen gender. The students expressed their desire for public schools to return to the policy that designated areas such as showers, locker rooms and bathrooms are based on biological gender alone. They said that this policy affects not only their privacy, but also their safety. The district policy of allowing gender-neutral bathrooms, Policy 8040, was approved back in 2021. The Nigerian Archdiocese of Abuja has raised concerns regarding the whereabouts of a priest who has been missing for a month. On the 30th of October, the Chancery sent a letter to the priests and religious informing them of the priest's disappearance. The letter says that at 8:45 p.m. on Sunday, October the 1st, Father Samson Emokidi departed from his home without any trace. The Archbishop and the Auxiliary Bishop of the Archdiocese have urged the entire Archdiocesan family to keep the missing priest in their prayers. They also requested that if anyone finds relevant information regarding the priest, it should be reported to the Chancery. The civil authorities have initiated an investigation. Authorities in France say that the anti-Semitic spraying of Stars of David on the facades of several buildings in Paris recalls the dark times of the 1930s. On Monday night, about 60 Stars of David were painted on walls in Paris's 14th arrondissement. The symbols were painted in blue, similar to the Israeli flag. Authorities are also looking into property damage cases made worse by discriminatory intent. The deputy mayor said that these symbols would be taken down and an investigation would be initiated. Meanwhile, Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said that since the commencement of the Hamas and Israel conflict in October, there have been over 850 reports of analogous crimes in France. A global rights watchdog has said that fighting and serious human rights abuses are still going on in Ethiopia, 1 year after the signing of a truce. It was on November the 2nd last year that the federal government and the Tigrayan rebel authorities signed an agreement promising to cease all hostilities in the Tigray region. Deputy Africa Director of Human Rights Watch Letizia Bader said that civilians in the conflict areas are still bearing the brunt of atrocities. According to the group, although the agreement cites the Ethiopian government's commitment to create a transitional justice policy to foster reconciliation and healing, it still lacks detail on criminal accountability for crimes committed. Both parties had also agreed to set up an African Union monitoring mechanism to oversee the pact. However, the African Union's effort is mainly focused on disarmament of the rebels. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again next time for more. And do remember, you can always visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.